Welcome back to Zarlengo Foundation's Unlocking Learning Disabilities Podcast. We are joined today by Jake Wetzel. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were at the 04 and 08 Olympics for rowing?
Actually, also the 2000 Olympics.
Oh,
so
okay.
I competed in 3 games, and in the first one I was quite young. I was like 22, and then I'm not surprised you missed it because it was over fast.
Yeah. So what is that like? What is the whole Olympic experience? I mean, it's got to be a lot of pressure, but it has to be super fun as well.
I would say the Olympic experience is a small part of the Olympic experience. It's a quadrennial. It's a 4-year process. And so the Olympics are a very interesting event because they happen every 4 years, and there's still events that are happening every year that are leading up to it. And a big part of our event is selection. And so we're in a competitive camp for essentially 12 months a year, and training 3 times a day as a team. So when we don't race very much, so we race in rowing, we race like 5 times a year, as opposed to like baseball where they're on the road constantly playing and competing. So the Olympics are a very different thing for us than sports that compete a lot, because all of a sudden you go from obscurity into the limelight.
Yeah.
And it's extremely high pressure. And what's different about them also is that when the games are done, your team is done. You're not building for anything more. It's like that's the end. And you're starting to if you keep going, you're starting to rebuild for a quadrennial that's 4 years away.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting because you can end up in not everybody at the Olympic Games is a winner. And so you end up in this situation where you have a lot of disappointed people, and you have a few people that are the only people that are truly satisfied are the ones that win.
Yeah.
And it's also different on what your expectations are when you go in. If you're going there, if qualifying was enough, or if you're in the hunt to win. So it's a lot of different. It means a lot of different things to just depending on the situation. But of course, when it's done, it's super fun. Yeah. It's a really nice release to taste freedom after so much time.
Yeah. I can imagine there's so many emotions you've been building for so long, and then it's just got to be a lot of emotional release.
A huge amount of emotional release. Yeah. And it's a roller coaster release. But like one of the hardest parts about it is the realization that when it's done, you've been a part of a unit or a team with all the support, and all the structure just goes poof.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting thing in the context of ADHD.
Yeah. So tell me about that. So tell me how your ADHD, how did it play into the Olympic experience?
I would always think about it in two ways. Like ADHD doesn't help you in train through the fall. Mm-hmm. So when you're just putting in monotonous miles, that's where you tend to people with ADHD tend to struggle. Mm-hmm. But as the pressure comes on, and as things start to become more and more, they matter more, ADHD actually becomes something that's actually quite beneficial, because I just felt like in the eye of crisis, or in the eye of like pressure, that's when started to wake up, and I loved being backed into a corner, because it meant the fight or flight emotions came up, and I loved the psychology, and I loved seeing my competitors struggling with the pressure when I felt more calm and centered.
Yeah, you were thriving under the pressure, and they were totally disintegrating under the pressure.
Yeah, but and the funny part about that though is that your teammates and coaches, they're picking up the pieces for you the rest of the year, but then they really need you in those kind of pivotal moments.
Yeah. So would you say that you were hyper focused? I mean, that the H part of the ADHD was helpful in training, or was the monotony just, how did you get around that?
Honestly, the way you get around it is that you have a structure that's set up where you have to be there. And so being kind to yourself and going, you're not going to be at like that peak. You can't, it's unsustainable to hold peak levels of focus.
Yeah.
And like I had problems with being the last one to the lake every day, and of like hated team meetings. I just hated all of the stuff that was drudgery. But and that stuff hurt. That stuff definitely like kind of hurt me. But the more you become part of a unit and part of a team, the more people understand you and they cut you slack. And so it's kind of a good team means that you have a balance of skills, and that's really the time for the people who are the steady eddies to lead the way.
Yeah. So tell me, how did your other two Olympic experiences end? Were they?
So my first Olympics, they almost felt like they were over as fast as they started. Everything just was going. I couldn't calm down. Just we were in the we stayed in the village, and it was just like very much just like something's happening everywhere all the time, and I just felt like I was missing out unless I went and saw things and talked to people. But also emotionally, I never came down, and it's really hard to go from an elevated level into a race environment where you need to be at a extremely highly elevated or point of elevation. And so my memories of those Olympics is there were just like it was almost like if you do a YouTube video and put it to like 2 times speed.
Sure.
It just felt like everything just happened and it was done and was in the B final and came 7th.
Yeah.
And like legitimately, we probably could have been in our semifinal. We had 1st, 2nd, and 4th, and there's 6 in the final. So we were in a tough semi. But you know what? Like that's just these are the things that you have to overcome, and you learn from it. The next Olympics, we went in. I was in the 4, and we were defending world champions, and went in and. The Great Britain put together essentially like a super boat. They pulled all their top people and put them into a 4 from the other boats, and we lost in the final by 0.08 of a second. So it was a photo finish.
Yeah.
And then so after that, I went into the 8, and we continued in the 8 and won and retired.
Oh yeah.
So it was a long run.
Yeah.
But it was time for it to end.
Yeah. So how did you manage after the Olympics? So you've been competing in this, super high level environment for so long. How did you bring the emotion down and kind of re-regulate?
The interesting part about it is that I had friends who took me, I went. It's actually a funny story because I flew straight from Beijing to Vancouver to Spokane, and friends picked me up, and all my luggage was lost, all my stuff was lost, and they took me to Burning Man.
Okay.
And Burning Man was a very interesting thing because I went from the most competitive environment in the world to one of the most like free and unstructured.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of opened my eyes to that there was other ways to be, and that was okay.
Yeah.
And it was about as nice of a come down as you could have imagined.
Yeah.
Where it got challenging is I started doing a PhD, and I did a PhD in finance, and the coursework was great, but then I really struggled with the research part of it, which was the research part of it was very individual and on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't have a team. I just had like a little bit of help from his supervisor checking in on me.
Yeah.
And that was not an ideal environment for me.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed doing the coursework and studying for the comprehensive exams, but like the next part of it was like more finishing it out of like determination and grit rather than like this is what I want to be doing.
Sure.
So it was not necessarily the best reintroduction into the world.
Sure.
However, like it was what happened. That's what happened for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot from doing it too, about myself, and also like through the program.
Yeah. So if you had to poll and say the 3 biggest strengths I have because of ADHD, or the one biggest strength I have, what do you think? How is it more of a blessing for you than it is, just this thing that you have to figure out? Is there anything that positive that comes from it in like your daily life?
Oh, 100%. I think it's like poise under pressure. I think it's curiosity and I would say kind of grit / determination. Like as an addendum to that, like if I think more and more, and I've talked to people in your field about it, and I think that ultimately what I learned where you can apply your strengths is when you're doing things where you're following your compass. So where you're doing the things that you're interested in, and that you have a determination to see it through, and like a curiosity.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't help me is when I'm having to do like repeatedly things that I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the monotony, and that's when I just don't feel like I'm like at my highest and best, put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I can.
And so if you're doing the things that you love, and that get you up in the morning,
mm-hmm.
then you can outdo just about anybody, because that ability to like zone in on something and do it because of the curiosity and passion and like willingness to like dig into it, it's a very important personality trait, and I think it like moves a lot of our society forward.
Yeah, I would agree. And just being able to tell kids that same thing, follow your passion, because it will make life so much easier than if you just try to stick yourself in this box and you have to do whatever you think you have to do, is kind of the message we always try to tell kids, particularly
and
ADHD.
And I would also say that kids should be like trying lots of things.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't want to do, if they do, like it's okay to like. I always felt like it was like okay to fail at things.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to try things and go, okay, this isn't for me. And it's like way harder to go, oh, I have this grand plan for what I want to do in life, and I want to become an accountant.
Yeah.
Or one of these things that's like where people just know what they want to do. I think with ADHD people, we don't know what we want to do, because we want to do everything,
Yeah.
and we also don't know what we don't. We also don't know what we don't like, and so you have to go and try things and start to rule them out.
Yeah.
And then you can start to focus in on the things that you do like to do. So it's kind of being kind to yourself in that process of figuring out that you're not going to be great at everything.
Mm-hmm.
And also, well, I think the other thing is that there are some things like learning math and learning to write, and being literate. Like, I guess now it's also learning to code.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things that you have to push through. You have to push through because they just open up doors. So it's like, okay, understand there are things that may not be your compass, but you've got to get through them. But the flip side of it is that on the bigger picture, just don't get stuck in a rut.
Yeah, I love that message.
Yeah, like don't shy away from things because you find them difficult or you don't like them, but just don't stick with something you don't love doing if it's for the longer term.
Yeah, I love that message. Well, I just want to thank you for kind of sharing your story and how your ADHD affected your Olympic experience, and I love to hear everybody's different takeaways from their learning difference and how it affected their life. So I really appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And thank you for the work that you do. And it's important to it's important, and in that none of it existed when I was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so it was my pleasure to have this time with you.